own nothing and control everything, take full advantage of what's available, not just to us on the little peon levels, but at the highest level, because that's also available to you. I promise you, you're not going to find the tax benefits that Americans have anywhere else. How can someone that is starting to make six figures, how can they start thinking about protecting their money?
It's a really well-worded sentence, protecting your money. And not a lot of people see it that way, that they're saving money, you're spending money, you're paying it out for taxes or accounts payable, but protecting money, what does that mean? There are so many things that want to take your money. And I don't mean like the business expenses, that's part of doing business, but there's things that we call doodads, there's taxes, there's expenses, there's legal fees that somebody somehow is going to sue you for something, not because they're right or wrong, but just because it might be good business for them to take your stuff if they can. And it's what I call legal theft. If I can convince a jury or a judge that you're wrong, I get your stuff. How great is that? What a great business opportunity. If someone doesn't know how to protect not just their assets, we talk about asset protection, but also protect your money, protect your cash flow, the money that's coming to you, then it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to compete in a marketplace that's, whatever your market is nowadays, hyper competitive. So we like to talk about what's an advantage? And maybe we'll just start talking about advantages. So if I have a business, what gives me a competitive advantage over the other guys that are doing what I'm doing? Well, you can have a better product, you can have better delivery, better marketing, a better team, better cash flow. But to really be better, to have we'll call it an unfair competitive advantage, what if you kept more of your profit, protected more of your profit, instead of having to give it to lawsuits or taxes or whatever, or mismanaging it because you didn't have a budget? Primarily what I do now, after living a few lives in other areas, is help small to medium-sized business owners understand that by design, they were never taught how to protect their money in the way that the 12-figure corporations do. They have it built into their taxation, built into their asset protection, because usually when you get to that level, you have built-in protections, government, lobbying, and all that. But it's way, way more than that. And most small businesses don't have big connections at Capitol Hill. And so some of those don't really translate to the small or medium-sized business owner. So if you're making even $50 million a year, you probably don't have in your pocket a senator in Washington, D.C. I mean, great if you do. Most people don't. So what's the other major way that we can protect our profits and protect our money? Taxes. And you go to your CPA, if you can get a hold of them at all during tax season, and say, hey, how do I save on taxes? That's what people say. How do I save on taxes? And it's really the wrong question. I think the better question is how you worded it, which is, how do I protect my profits? And CPAs don't think that way. CPAs are, really just entrepreneurs, bad entrepreneurs most of the time, because, most of them are like, how do I build my business? Oh, I'll take my clients out to lunch once a year and befriend them. And most of our clients are like, well, but my CPA is like my friend. I don't want to have to fire them because they don't know what they're really doing to help prepare taxes. They're not your friend. They're just, if you say to them, oh, I've got a C corporation, an LLC, and I'm actually getting the money that I need out of an S-Corp, and I've got my real estate, they're going to fire you because they're going to look at that and go, I don't do that. I set you up with an S-Corp. Why aren't you happy with that? because I'm making $1 million a year in profits, and that S-Corp, and I live in the state of California, I'm paying 45% tax.
Yeah, which is outrageous. So at first, when I came to America, I come from a third world country, communist country. We don't pay any taxes. I mean, the government owns everything, so we don't have to pay any taxes. But then when I came to America, I'm like, oh, it would be awesome if I get to make, like 100, 150 grand. That's like, $10,000 to $12,000 a month. I can be set.
Yeah.
And then when I got hit with taxes, especially in California, to me, sometimes it angers me that we have that amount of taxes and the taxation that happens, especially for people that are not making that huge amount of money. How did you learn about all the ins and outs of these strategies and things that you could do? Because I think that's an interesting story, how you found out. And I didn't realize until I heard your story that that's how the thing actually worked.
Right. It's funny, for your viewers, not a lot of people understand that every state has its own tax. Now, as a contrast, I live in Tennessee. I grew up here in California where we are now. But your tax here in California starts at around 10%. In Tennessee, we got zero tax. And when I grew up, I didn't know that. I was a musician. All my degrees are in music composition. I wrote music for film and television. What a great life it was, living here in Hollywood, and then became an editor and then a filmmaker like you. Not like you, but filmmaking. It was my dream. The problem was I loved finance. I loved trading options. I loved when crypto came out. I loved all of that. And I also got involved. I mean, as the story goes, my best friend's parents had me over one night. They lived very close to where my parents lived. And we were having a dinner, and they're like, hey, so did you know that it's illegal for the IRS to tax you on your domestically earned income? I was like, what? What are you talking about? I didn't have any tax problems. I was a struggling musician, but they're like, this is a thing. And they got me all worked up. I was in my 30s. And I was like, you've got to, no, this can't be. And they showed me in the tax code, if you look under the definitions of what all sources is, all sources, when it says you're taxed on all sources, well, it doesn't mean you're domestically earned income if you live domestically. I was like, how can this can't be, And so they're like, would you like to join several thousand of us to try to bring down the Federal Reserve and put us back on this gold and silver standard and bring down the IRS? I'm like, this sounds, yes, that's me. So that was like 2001-ish, 2002. I was just starting to direct. I just had my first short film and started winning awards. And I'm like, this will be a great parallel. I'll be like this anti-culture, anti-system guy, and then a filmmaker. What a great story. Well, what nobody tells you if you try to take on the federal government. Now, in Cuba, if you try to take on the federal government, you quietly vanish, I'm sure. So here, they don't do that, but they try in their way. And basically, if you don't have any capital, that's their theory. If you don't have any capital, you don't have any assets, they've taken it all from you, then it's very hard to fight if you're on the street. And it's a pretty good theory. It works pretty well. So we're all like, hey, the federal government's coming after us, and some guys who have property, or they don't have their property anymore, there's liens against them, the levies and all kinds of stuff. And banks are closing their accounts and no more credit for their business. And we were like, shoot, we didn't think about this. And we tried everything. We tried LLCs and trusts and foundations. And if you know anything about corporation souls, we tried those. Nothing really protected the assets from the government until we discovered one day, I mean, it wasn't just me, but I'm the one that kind of broke it open. Because I was in film, in those days, if you were an executive producer, you had no creativity. If somebody wanted to pitch you a television show, you had to show them a comic book. So we had a television show, this action show called Omega One. We were pitching it to, I think it was Fox. And so we built this comic book, and we were very proud of it. And I was in this little print shop in Burbank, California, which is sort of near here. And there was nobody there, and they were, we're going to go find it. It's in the back. I was there for a long time. And on the other end of this counter is this big rolled up parchment looking thing. And I wouldn't have paid it any mind, except stamped all over it in big red stamps was do not disclose, confidential. And I was like, well, there's nobody around. I figured it was architecture. which would have entertained me for like 30 seconds because but I was bored. So I opened it up and rolled it out. But what I saw was the entire corporate structure of two monolithic global distributors of film who had just merged. This is 2007. So I won't say who it is here, but if you know, you know. And it was hundreds of companies and three giant pillars. And what I saw was like, oh, here's C-Corp attached to a bunch of LLCs, and the HR people are paid here, and the trusts hold this, and the S-Corps do this, and then it kept going down and down. And at the bottom were companies everybody knows. And at the top, you have no idea who those companies are. And we were like, wait a minute. And it took us a while to figure out why they did what they did. Now, at the time, we were looking at one of the three pillars that we're always solving for, which was asset protection. Again, protecting your profits. How do you protect your money? That's the most direct one. Somebody wants to come take your stuff, lawsuit. How do you keep them? You can't keep from going to court. You also can't keep from winning or losing in a court because courts are just a circus. But you can make your stuff look so distasteful that someone's probably not going to want to sue you. Asset protection. So we looked at it from that perspective because the government was trying to take our stuff. But there was two other massive other pillars that showed up, which we learned later: tax reduction, which I know we're going to cover, and then legacy preservation. Hey, when you pass, here in America, we have an estate tax. In some states, we have inheritance tax. It's the most disgusting thing that Americans don't think about. Like if you live in Rhode Island, Kentucky, Massachusetts, Oregon, Washington, there's another one in there, you're in an inheritance tax state. And so after the government's done with your assets on the estate tax side and your kids or whoever get the stuff, the state comes and takes more. And granted, the latest rulings make your estate tax $15 million a person. That's pretty high. But if you live another 30 years, and you're going to live at least 90 more, you got inflation. You're going to buy some apartments or some real estate, or you're going to have crypto go up. You've got life insurance. That all counts. They come take it from you. Oh, life insurance is tax-free. No, not if you go over 15 million, they come take it. So we're like on the asset protection side going, this is great. We start implementing it and it stops everything. We've moved our assets away from our own self. John D. Rockefeller, arguably the richest man ever lived, goes to own nothing, control everything. And he was not talking about trust. He was talking about in this corporate thing that we're discovering, hey, this giant 12-figure merging company, corporation on the New York Stock Exchange, this is what they do. Okay, well, why don't we know about this? Why doesn't my CPA say to do this? So that was questions that we kind of just put in the back of our mind because at least we were then able to do our business and fight the government. Now, obviously, we lost fighting the government. We're still an IRS. We're still a Federal Reserve printing money like crazy. But when crypto came, we were all making money hand over fist. And I lived here in California at the time, and my tax on the profits were like mid-20s, including state tax. And everybody else was paying 50, 45%. And they're like, how are you doing this? And so the lessons that we learned from that started then coming into the tax side. Especially with investing, you want to protect your profits. Now, in trading and trading in particular, the only thing that's going to take your profits are in crypto, network fees, if you go from ERC20 to whatever the network is. And in those days, it was like ERC20 for Ethereum was like $100 at a whack each way. You're like, wait. But if you put that into this particular structure that we espouse, that's deductible. You can write it off. And then, of course, if you take a loss, and then the government, the taxes get their piece, and short-term capital gains, especially in California, could be very, very high. It's your tax bracket, whatever your tax bracket is, whatever your income is, that's what your capital gains are going to get taxed at, plus state. So we learned that this structure that these big 12-figure corporations do cut your tax to about 21%, flat. We're like, wait a minute, you mean California doesn't get a piece? And, obviously if you don't live in California, it's even easier. But, if you live in Tennessee, you don't have to pay that. But your federal is capped at 21%. Yeah. You make $1.5 billion in profit, 21%. That's like revolutionary.
The reason I created this show is so I could grab your attention. Attention is powerful. And at Red Axe Media, we work with multiple brands and celebrities to help them harness that attention and use cinematic content to elevate their brand. When I started learning from your content, that was one of the things that I was like, okay, this changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you hear this story and you think about big corporations doing all of this, you're like, yeah, of course, they're going to do it. They're going to figure it out. That's one of the things that me coming from a communist country to a capitalist country, I still get really frustrated when I see people who are pretty ignorant saying, we have to tax the rich. We have to like take the money from the rich and like distribute it and all that. That is never going to happen properly, and it shouldn't happen, because if those people have money, it's not because they stole it. They created products and services to make money, and that's why they should have the money. That's what keeps our country like being at the forefront of everything. You just need to learn how to move your assets and your income in the same way that those people do it. The quote from Rockefeller that you mentioned, own nothing and control everything.
Mm-hmm.
That completely shifted my mind around income and money. And like, I think when you're starting out, you really want to have everything. Like, there is something about you owning and having the bank account with your name and that balance, or like you owning that car or you owning the house.
It's mine.
Which you also have talked about how even if you buy a house and you pay it off, it's not really yours, because the government still have to pay property taxes, and if you don't do it, they will come.
They're gonna take your house.
What can people do when they get to that range in terms of their corporate structure to alleviate and protect themselves?
It's a great question. So let's say we got some whiskey here. Thank you. It's very good. But let's say it isn't whiskey. Let's say it's liquid gold. And right now, as of December 26, 2025, gold shot through the roof on just a few days ago. So did silver, so did platinum, just went crazy. This is worth tens of thousands of dollars at the weight that it is right now. It's mine for now. But let's say I owe somebody money. Let's say I owe our friend Sterling money. And she's like, you're behind. And our contract says I get to collect now that you're in arrears. If she comes to me and says, what's that in your hand? Well, it's I have to tell her it's legally, it's liquid gold. Well, I'm going to take it. Well, but this is way more than what I owe you. It doesn't matter. I'm going to take it all. And then you can come figure out how to get it back. That's how a lawsuit can work. We're just going to take it all. It's also how the IRS and the SEC work. We don't know how much really, but we're just going to take it all. We're going to take our whole bank account for 30 days. And then we'll figure it out. You get to sort it out from there. So I'm kind of stuck. If I owe, but I'm holding the liquid gold, then I'm whatever liabilities I personally owe, this gets included. And someone, a creditor, the IRS, whoever I owe to contractually, get to take this. Well, what if I don't want them to take it? What if I'm like, this is important to me? Obviously, well, earn more money, pay your debts. But let's say things happen. I mean, a lot of people learned a lot in COVID about how fragile your money-making situation can be. So what if, though, I say, well, I tell you what, I'm going to hold on to this, but I'm also going to monetize it. And you come along and you're like, gosh, I really need some liquid gold, but I don't have any money. What can I do? And I go, you need liquid gold? Yeah, but I don't have that kind of money to go buy it. Okay, well, I tell you what, I'm going to loan this to you. It's still mine, but we have a contract that you're going to pay me, I'm making it up, $10,000 a month. So you can use the liquid gold in your machinery or whatever, making this a little ridiculous, but you get the idea. Now, do I have possession of it? No. Do I control it?
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah.
I lent it. You actually have the control over it.
Mm-hmm.
But when Sterling comes to me and says, where's that liquid gold I know you have? I'm like, oh, well, I've actually tied it up in a contract somewhere. What do you mean a contract? Well, I put it into service. Can Sterling collect from me now? No. It's locked up in a contract, a legitimate contract. Now, if I knew she was coming and I specifically conveyed it to avoid her, that's called fraudulent conveyance, and you go to jail. But if you're like, no, this is a legitimate business and I can prove that. Now, I own it, but I don't control it. Nevertheless, I don't have it. If I don't have it, nobody can take it. She can come to you and she can go, hey, Axel, that's actually that's actually mine. Mark owes me, and I should get that. And you're like, well, I'd love to give it to you. You seem nice, but I have a contract with Mark. I have to return it. Otherwise, I'm liable to Mark. You see? So you can't, and you don't have any agreement with her anyway. No matter what she says, you're like, I don't kind of know who you are, and I know Mark. So you control it and don't own it. So even if you owed her money, and she goes, well, you're holding on to that, I should get it. Well, yeah, but it's not mine. I can't possibly give this to you unless you want to borrow it from me too. And then we can create commerce that way. So until I say, oh, well, I'll take this back and thanks for the interest and all of that. Okay, well, the interest might have cost you 5, 6, 7%, but you were able to make 20, 30% because you knew how to do something with liquid gold. I'm just holding on to it. So it works both ways. The borrower gets a benefit and the borrowee gets a benefit. I don't own it. It's yours. No one can take it from me. And so for the $100,000 person who's making in their business, not just like gross, but like if you're making profit at $100,000, that's where your CPA is probably going to show up and say, oh, well, you need an S corporation. S corporations are great for a lot of reasons, especially in California, but they're somewhat short-sighted because this year you made 100,000, but next year you might make 400,000, and the year after that you might make $1 million. And the minute you get over $500,000 for everybody, all your listeners who have S corporations, that S corporation's harming you because your federal tax is still 37% plus, and the California tax is still involved. You're not really winning. So in the 100,000 and above, and my new book, which we talk about actually at the $60,000 level, the very first thing we got to do, and it's ugly, no one wants to do it, which is why people hemorrhage money all over the place, is do a budget. And I don't mean up here like, well, I kind of know. We work with clients, and I've done this since I started working with clients in 2020 on their budgets. And when you take the last 3 months of your expenditures, and I mean, sometimes that's hard to do. You got your Apple accounts now, you got the credit cards, you got banking statements, you got all the weird things. But if you tally them all, categorize them all the way I suggest people do, and say, oh, here's my food, here's my entertainment, here's my medical, here's my travel, and there's quite a few, you're going to find 9 times out of 10, you're hemorrhaging 20% of the money that you're making. And I'm not even talking about taxes yet, because we can almost always get people's taxes way down doing what we do. But just from a budget standpoint, you're like we had a guy who didn't realize that his, now ex-wife was pulling $900 in cash out of an ATM every month. She was just saying for a rainy day. And he was like, I was like, what's this cash deposit or withdrawal? He goes, well, I don't know. That's weird. I go, it is weird. And then find out, she goes, oh, well, we have to store it for in case the bank's closed or something. And so it's like, you don't know. And if you never have looked at your bank statements, nobody balances checkbooks anymore because it's so many different things. But we got to at least somewhere along the line here, take a snapshot of your 3 months. Doesn't mean it's your whole year, but 3 months is a good kind of standard of measure to give yourself an idea, and then go, where am I spending money? I remember my first year being married, we discovered that we spent $3,000 that year on Starbucks.
Wow.
Yeah. And we didn't drink that much coffee. And the nearest Starbucks was 45 minutes away. So we didn't go that often. But when we went, it was over $100 at a whack, because it was food and all this other stuff, because she just loved it. I mean, I loved it too. So when I looked at, oh man, that's crazy. Looking at that, it gives us a whole new view on where money's really going. And then you find bank fees and weird interest charges. And then you get to call the bank and go, why did this happen? Oh, well, sorry, our mistake. Well, if you didn't know, they get the money.
What are some tips and strategies that you could share with us for people who are married to think about finances, and how should they structure their spending, their cards, or anything that you would want to touch on that you have seen with all the people that you help?
It's very difficult, very difficult. I don't know anyone who was actually trained in how to manage money, just basic finance. My parents, when they grew up, they were boomers, and they had home economics class. They went to home ec, and women were taught how to do the things and sew and all this stuff, and you keep money and clip coupons or whatever. Now we're just told, save money, work hard. And that's, first of all, a horrible idea to save money and work hard, and B, doesn't actually work. And so when you have a couple, and you're a little bit younger than me, my generation can't live generally without two incomes. My parents was one. Now it's two. My sons, it takes three. It's very difficult to have agreements in relationships where both the feminine, and I don't mean male and female, I mean the feminine and the masculine can thrive. Because you have it in lesbian couples, you have it in gay couples, you have it in whatever you want to call yourself. There's still the continuum of masculine and feminine. And it's very difficult without some kind of knowledge to go, how do we navigate the feminine's need to be safe, protected, and provided for, and to feel cherished, which is really important, and the masculine's desire and need to provide and protect and create honor. And most people just, finances is the number one, what is the statistics? Finances is the number one killer of relationships. And if 90% of the relationships are 90%, I shouldn't say 90% of the marriages are dissolved by women in this country. We're over 51% overall, but 90% of those are dissolved by women. What we have to know is that women are not getting their needs met. And if finance is the number one reason, I'd love to see some statistics on how that actually all blends together. But logically, if women are causing the divorces, there's no judgment. It's just a fact. And finance is the number one reason, something's not happening. Something's not working. And in our American culture. And so what's the answer? Well, it's the same question that we have in business that I think we should have in family, which is what you said in the beginning. How do we protect our finances? Protection is 100% masculine. Again, not male, female. Masculine. Relationships where the woman makes way more money than he does. So in a sense, she's in that masculine role. And what's most important is for her, how do I continue to provide and protect? So we have to look at what are the number one drainers of finances, married or single, but in this case, in the married, taxes is your number one. You have to find excellent tax advice, whether you're in business or you're W-2. Or one or the other, or both. Sometimes you get both. And that isn't always necessarily your CPA or your tax attorney or your EA. You probably should do a little research on your own, which is why we have over 600,000 followers going, hey, wait, what did he just say?
Yeah. And I don't think a little research, I think you're being nice and kind. I think you have to do a lot of research. And like my brother and I spent hours when we started watching your course. If that is the equivalent of 20 to 30% of our income.
More in California.
That is massive. That means that like a whole quarter or more, I'm working to just pay the bare minimum taxes.
It's not a quarter. Let me just say that I have a graphic we put up a few weeks ago on, we call it Tax Freedom Day. One is the day during the year that you stop working for, in this case, California and the federal government, and actually start making money. In Tennessee, it's like late March because we don't have any state tax. But here, it's early June. Almost 6 months of California citizens within a certain range work for their taxes. And that's a huge strain on a relationship where they're like, how come we can't get ahead? You're not designed to. Worse, we talk about sharecropping. Do you know this word? Sharecropping? Yeah. Nobody talks about it because it's really came out of the slavery movement in the late 19th century. But we're in the slave cropping, the sharecropping conversation where I work a W-2 job, my wife works a W-2 job. We get taxed on that income. We get sales tax on that. We get property tax. We get, here in California, massive gas travel tax. And then they take a bunch of our money and stick it into a 401k. They take another bunch of it and stick it to the IRS, and we have to wait for a year to get it back. And inflation's over, it's not 3%, y'all. Go look at the price of bread in the last 3 years. It's like 9, 10%. So by the time you get it back, it's super depressed in terms of buying power. And then they throw at you, oh, well, if you invest in the markets, then you can make lots of money. Except the markets are designed to take your money. And we know that's true because how many people do you know that actually make money in the markets? And then any winnings that you make are taxed. And you're at a graduated tax system so that this idea we said earlier, oh, work hard and make more money, save more money. No, the more money you make, the more you lose in taxes. So this idea that, oh, I have a big job and there's a wealth strategy in here. Where? And so for the couple that are trying to figure out how do we build for the future? And we're inundated with, hey, you're not enough advertising. You need this. And until both partners, the masculine and the feminine partner, whichever gender that is, or blend, until both partners realize that every dollar we spend that isn't toward investment, and I don't just mean stocks, I could mean your side hustle, your business, every dollar you spend has a surtax. What's the surtax? Income tax, state tax. Oh, I want to buy that $10,000 jacuzzi. Jacuzzis are great. We love it. Except it's not going to cost you $10,000. If you live in the state of California, that's going to cost you 35% additional. It's $13,500. Why? Because the money you had to earn to get that was taxed. And there's sales tax. So $10,000, it's $11,000, it's $14,500. Did you make a good investment on a depreciating item? No. That means if you invested at 10%, that's an $80,000 hit to your retirement account 40 years from now. Way better. And again, we were never taught this, Axel. And in a communist country, in a sense, some of this has been stripped away because the government is all in on making sure everybody's good. The government's not all in on making everybody good here. It's up to you. And so they've taught us the backwards way to make money, which is to keep them sharecropping. And I know I talked about earlier, sharecropping, the idea that I pay you, you're my former slave, but now I can't make you a slave because that's bad. So I'm going to pay you just enough to work, make a wage, but you live on my land. You pay your clothing, you pay your food, and you pay the rent. And that's just more than what I pay you. And all the things that you consume, I provide. So I'm making money on your labor. And if you think about the W-2 workers and even small business, from whom are they buying their groceries and their clothes? The same 12-figure corporations that are paying, if you think about how money flows,
their salary,
paying their salary. We're in the slave loop.
So how do you think we can break out of that loop?
Business. We're in America. We're not in Britain. We're not a socialist country. They're working really hard on it, but we're not yet there. Capitalism does not live as a W-2 employee. In fact, what I say is it's not 1953. And you don't get a gold watch after 40 years of working at a company. In fact, you'll be lucky to work at a company for 4 years anymore. The American dream lives in the employers, not in employees. And the employer's American dream is on the backs of the sharecropping employees. I get a lot of haters. I love my haters. They're great. They make the algorithm go up for me. And one of the haters' comments generally is, well, not everybody can be a business owner. Why is that? Oh, because the system would break down. Would it?
How so?
It's an interesting concept. If capitalism exists so that the people who employ get the benefits, then isn't that just a pyramid scheme? Then don't you have to have a whole bazillions of employees and little grunts to do your little work? And the answer is yes. And I still say, I and our team is going to do everything we can to educate Americans to go, you don't have to believe that you have to be an employee. No matter how hard I yell about getting even a small side hustle business, there's still going to be millions of people that are like, well, yeah, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go to my job. And I live in one of the rural parts of Tennessee where everywhere people are working at $8 an hour, working at Walmart. Or they burned up their 401k because they didn't realize that it was going to go away. And there's 75-year-olds bagging my groceries at Walmart, which is like the worst. So no matter how hard we talk about get a side hustle, start building your business, start weaning yourself away from the sharecropping cycle of Americans. People are still going to be W-2s. So there's no way we're ever going to do away with capitalism because there's no employees.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's very simple. It's just very hard to do. Because when you have your own business, you don't clock in and clock out. You don't have the weekend to yourself. You don't have the safety of like the paycheck every Friday or every other Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I don't know how I'm going to like pay my employees or like pay rent or pay for this or the loans on the equipment and all that.
Yeah.
And I have to like stay up and figure it out and call people and like find a way to make money. But at the same time, is the beauty of it. Sometimes I get paid in a windfall and I make all of this money without even having to work that much because I have created a system, I have created a brand, I have created a company. It's just difficult. And I think some people don't want to put up with the hard work. To me, what's sad is when people don't have the education or the information. Because I came to America with $70 and a backpack. And now I make multiple six figures. I have a company. I live in LA.
And you're so good looking.
Thank you. That helps a lot.
It helps a lot.
It helps a lot.
I'm telling you.
When I first came to America, I had no idea how any of this worked. I didn't ever have a credit card. I didn't even have a bank account in Cuba because what for? I had like no money.
The funny thing is no one here knows either. It's not just you. So you didn't go to high school here. And people who go to high school here, or whatever you go to school here, even in college, what do you learn about finance? You have one path, get a job. That's what you're taught. That's the nature of education here, to create a workforce, not to create entrepreneurs, which is backwards until you realize, oh, if we did have a nation of entrepreneurs, nothing would work. We have to have a working class. And so imagine if you went to high school, whether Cuba or here, and they said, listen, class, you really have two choices to how you're going to live your life as a career person. One, you're going to get a job. You're going to lose most of it to taxes, but it's regular, and you're going to get benefits if you quit or get fired, and you're going to have insurance, and you don't have to worry about that. You just go to work 5 days a week, the 9 to 5. You party on the weekends, and you'll retire with a retirement. Now, we don't know if it's going to be enough for you or not, but you'll have a retirement built in thanks to the companies that you're working for. That's what most people hear. First of all, that's all they hear. But imagine if there was option number two. Option number two, there's no guarantee. It's all on you. There's no backup. You pay for your insurance. You've got to get the investors. You have to deal with all the little minions and all the little personal problems. You got to deal with the regulations in the state. But you have unlimited upside. You have limited taxation, which these guys over here get max pain. But nobody would really want to tell you, and why they don't talk about this. If you fail, it's okay. You can declare business bankruptcy and move on and start again. In fact, that's why banks have bankruptcies for business, because you can do this. You know, the average successful entrepreneur fails 17 times. That's 17 in America. That's a lot of bankruptcies. That's a lot of banks forgiving debt and going, well, that's what we're all about. Business, small business, medium-sized business, big businesses. If that were what were proposed to you, unlimited upside, no downside, you just declare bankruptcy, you structure yourself with a C-Corp and an LLC and the S-Corp and the limited liability capabilities in your state, especially if you're in a non-charge, it's not going to affect you. You get to keep your cash personally. Which one would you pick? Everybody picks this one. Why would I want to be That's why they don't teach this stuff. Well, everybody would do this. Now, not everybody can. Like you were saying, hey, man, it's self-motivated. Mom's not going to come and kick you out of bed and go, hey, you got to go to work. It's on you. And worse, it's not just on you to do it. It's on you to motivate your team to do it and their team. But I tell you what, if people got taught this, no one would do the job thing, which is why it's by design they don't. And why the IRS does not train CPAs, EAs, or most tax attorneys in some of the subtle points of how to convey property tax-free into a company, get it out of your name, get the assets out of your name into a situation where if somebody sued you, you don't even have to declare that it was yours. You don't have to get taxed on that in the same way. And, what we learned that day in the print shop was, man, there's a whole nother level of knowledge that the big guys are using and intentionally keeping the little guys down. Because how would you create a competitive advantage against somebody who's paying half the taxes you're paying? And they're already in the billions, and you're at $100,000 or even $50,000, and you're still paying 30% tax, and they're paying 21%. They made $15 billion. They're paying 21%. How are you going to compete? You can't. By design. And I'm here to say, not all the mechanisms that the 12-figure companies get can we translate to the smaller businesses, but the ones that matter most to give you an unfair competitive advantage in the marketplace legally do translate. Your CPA doesn't talk about it. They're going to say that it's impossible. Your EA, most of the time, these are people who are entrepreneurs designed to fill out tax forms, and there's no monetary benefit for them to give you a tax benefit. You pay them the same. I mean, imagine if you had a vendor, Axel, who delivered late, didn't do a good job, in fact, forced you to get your delivery 6 months later with an extension, didn't return your phone calls during delivery. Would you hire them back?
No.
Nobody would.
If I did that, I would get fired.
You'd get fired as the business owner. You're a terrible CEO or whatever your title is.
Yeah.
But we do it every year with our financial certificate, so-called certified financial people. By design, so the little guys stay little. And I was just talking about this with my mom, who's quite savvy. And she was like, the chasm between the rich and everybody else is getting wider. And I'm like, I'd say in the next 3 years, it's going to get so wide that no amount of being Robin Hood and robbing from the rich, tax the rich and feed the poor, or welfare, or whatever things that, honestly, people who are W-2 employees in the loop are going to say, none of that is going to get you here. That's where I'm at with it.
It's just impossible because the math, when you're compounding at that rate, it's the same that happened, with credit card debt. When you're paying 30% on something, like, we had a rough time during COVID because all of production stopped, everything was terrible.
Totally.
I had money, I had savings, I was doing great. Then I had to go into my savings to live through that year and a half that we had no work. And it was terrible. I'm still paying for stuff. I'm still fighting with interest and all of that. So there is no easy way, I don't see, other than building your own thing and trying to create your own business or your own offer, your own opportunity. Something happens to the mind of a person when they stay in poverty for so long. It's so difficult and you get so exhausted and you just don't see a light. I really appreciate what you're doing with your content because you're giving people, hey, there's this little secret that is not so secret. All of these people are using their corporate structure this way to help themselves. You just need to learn how to play the game. I just feel sad for all the people that are bashing the system or saying that America is terrible, that America, the American dream is dead and this and that. It's no, there's still hope. There's still things to do here. We just need to be a little bit smarter, pay attention, listen, don't be a know-it-all, and try to learn from people like you and people who are making content and putting information out there. I still believe that there's things that we could do. Even if we're broke, even if we're going through a tough time, we just need to listen and learn how to take the steps towards fixing everything. The reason I created this show is so I could grab your attention. Attention is powerful. And at Red Axe Media, we work with multiple brands and celebrities to help them harness that attention and use cinematic content to elevate their brand. You were mentioning that it was really hard for people to do a budget.
Why would you do it? What a mess. It's a lot of Excel spreadsheet. Gross. I don't like Excel, but sometimes you got to do it. What's the advantage? The simple answer is not save money. That was for the boomers. That worked. Invest money. Now, you don't need to know what your retirement number is right now at your age, although it helps. Retirement number meaning is how much money do I need to have invested so that I don't have to work anymore.
All we really need to know is what's the investment vehicle we're going to use in which we're going to retire. It doesn't have to be stocks. It doesn't have to be bonds or options or crypto. It can be wine. It can be comic books. It can be real estate as another one. But anything that you're like, I get excited about these things. I flip these things, coins. We don't make pennies anymore. Maybe pennies will be worth millions. Who knows? Whatever that is. So why would we do a budget? Because if I could find $500 a month by going, that's an expense you shouldn't have. That's an expense we can combine here. This is something that we could get rid of. Do we need this? Without changing your lifestyle very much. You can have $1 million in a bank account or an investment or whatever holding you have in 20 years. You have to be able to invest though. We've been told save and work hard. What does save do? Save implies I'm taking my money and putting it into what? Bank. By putting it into a bank, we lose the value of it. And what's a bank going to give you? Even on a CD right now with interest rates so high, it's like 5%. It's not bad, but it's like, that doesn't even get over inflation. We need to be able to make 15, 20, 25%. And none of the guys that you're going to hand your money to in your 401k or any of those brokers are going to give you more than 8. And they take 1%. So it's like, well, wait a minute. How do I do that? Well, first, let's find the money. Budget. I got $500 a month or more. And in the book, I show you how these are the places where money usually gets found, where people are like for us, Starbucks or whatever. You don't have to not go to Starbucks, but maybe there's a better way to get the same value. You and I were talking about vacations. Oh, I love going to Turks and Caicos. If I had a family, though, we wouldn't go to Turks and Caicos. That's a huge expense, and it's not so great for kids. We go somewhere else that has the same intrinsic value, memories for the kids, which, people are like, oh, you just, cheap out on your vacations. No, man, that's your kid's life. That's your partner and you. That's memories. That has value. It's not what we call a doodad. It's a thing. But do shrink that for now until you can generate investment income from putting your money away to pay for bigger things. We've been told to save. Spend the money that you earn on what you need to make the expenses happen and save the rest. That's a lie. You should, if at all possible, take all the money you make and invest it. That's what the rich do. And then from the investment income, pay your bills. First of all, that's taxed at a very different rate. And you're like, well, wait a minute. The first money I get is earned. Yes, I know. We can't get around that unless you have a silver spoon and you got rich parents. But let's say you're bootstrapping yourself. Yeah. But take the money, invest it, and then from the investments, pay the budget. And now, whatever money you have left over, you're investing, you're creating an upward spiral at a much lower tax rate. Now, the only question is, how are you going to invest? What's the most important skill you could learn in your life? Not as a business person. It's not making profit. It's not even protecting profit. Although, being good at relationships is important. That's important. But it's how will I invest? Because if I don't know, then I'm stuck like everybody else making 8% or handing it to some guy. I hope he knows what he's doing or she knows what she's doing. I want to have control so I wake up in the morning and I spend 5 minutes looking at my system or whatever that is, buy wine or whatever. Artwork is another great one. I was just at Art Basel in Miami, people making bazillions flipping artwork. That's a thing. If you're into art, I'm not. But if you are, man, how great. Whatever it is, spend 5 minutes in the morning. Okay, I'm going to buy this or I'm going to buy this or I'm going to sell that. Great. And then that's it. Go back to business. Build your business. And then when you're ready to retire, you've developed a skill set that can make you 15, 20, 25%, which is more than you need to have 7 figures and to live well here in the United States. And that's literally opposite of what we've been taught. Work hard, put the money in the banks, and keep doing that, or a 401k or whatever that is. That's not going to get you there. How do I know? Because the guys at Walmart that are at 70 years old bagging my groceries were told the same thing. They were making $60,000, $70,000 a year. So if you're in business and you don't understand the best way to create legacy, and I don't just mean like for your family and generations, that's a whole different conversation, but just so that when you say, I'm done working, I have money, if I do live to be 110, which is kind of likely for most of us, even me, given medical advantages, I don't want to get to 85 and go, shoot, I'm out of money.
I got to go back to work or I got to go on government something. That's, first of all, it's irresponsible. And it's irresponsible if you know that you can do something else, that if you've invested your money or you've developed a skill. And so we have a mutual friend who does very well in the film industry, restoring film. And one of the questions I had asked him is, I said, how much money do you need to retire? And he's like, oh, I think, whatever it was, $7-8 million. I'm like, that's a lot of money to have sitting around. And he's working a W-2 job doing this work, paying the tax, state of California, all that other stuff. I'm like, how are you going to get to $8 million? He's like, oh, I don't know. I'm just living in a fantasy land. I'm like, well, what if instead of worrying about how much money you need to have in the bank to retire, to create a future for yourself when you want to stop working, you developed a skill that could take $1 million and live. And in my book, I show you, look, just save $500 a month. And if you knew how to trade or whatever it was and do 15% a year, which is kind of easy to do in most things, not buying stocks, it's not going to get you there, but other things, then you should be set 20 years from now. And he's in his, I don't know how old he is, but he's somewhere in your zone. And it's like, dude, it's inevitable. We think about earning. But earning is the worst possible thing you could do because it's taxed at the worst rate. It comes to you. And if you don't know how to get it out of your name and invest it in a structure that's going to save you on taxes and protect it from lawsuits, and if you pass tomorrow, hand it down to your kids without government involvement, it's all going away. It's not really going to matter. All your labor is going to get wasted. Yeah. And that's what we see over and over again. And it makes me sad. And that's how we were trained in high school. Here, you only get this. This is your only choice. Good luck. You're crazy if you want to get, what did your parents say when you got a job? You're like, oh, good, you got your first job. And then when you open your first business, they're like, you did what? What did you do?
A big part of everything that you're talking about has to do with that relationship between parents and children. The reality is most of us have parents that had a job. They didn't have businesses. They didn't have investments. So all they know how to do and what they pass on to you is what they know, which is get a job and be good at your job so you have safety. The reality is that having a job, even though it sounds safe, in reality, it's not safe. You could wake up tomorrow and they could fire you and that's it. And you could then spend like 2 years trying to get a job and not find it.
In a hyper-competitive marketplace.
Yes. Yeah. I want you to touch on the elements that we as men need to be thinking about. What do we need to teach our kids and our children about money? Like in my case, I have 2 kids. I want to have more kids. What are the things that I should be thinking about that I need to instill in my children so they can be way better off than me in the future?
First of all, let's touch on paying your kids tax-free. If you have an LLC, multi-member or single member, which means it's taxed as a partnership or it's what they call a sole proprietorship, taxed as a sole proprietorship, you can pay your kids, each kid, up to your standard deduction tax-free to them. For 2025, that's $15,750. You have 2 kids. That's $31,000 you could have paid your kids that your company got to write off. They don't have to file for. And there's no W-2. Everybody's like, oh, you have to W-2 them. No.
Do you pay them as a subcontractor?
You pay them as a subcontractor virtually. And that's possible because in the Internal Revenue Code, it's non-exclusionary law. Now, I'm not an attorney, I'm an enrolled agent, but I can talk about the Internal Revenue Code and say that non-exclusionary law means if you want to do C and it doesn't contradict anything in the law, you can do it. Exclusionary law says if it doesn't say you can, you cannot. But the Internal Revenue Code is, hey, if we don't say you can't, you can. The law says, A, you can own as a parent an LLC and pay your kids without any FICA, without any, withholding. A. B, anybody who earns less than their standard deduction, not just kids, you, me, hopefully we make a lot more than that. But if you didn't, you don't file, you don't pay tax. So if you want to pay your kids less than their standard deduction and you're paying them from an LLC, they don't pay tax. You deduct it. It's tax-free to them. Think about just from a tax benefit as a business owner, what's possible as long as you keep your kids taken care of. You're taking care of their kids. You're paying for their food, their clothing, and their education. That's required. You can't take the money that you paid them tax-free and go pay for your education. No, you can't do that. You still have to pay for that personally. But you were going to do it anyway. One of the strategies is pay the kids. The next day, have your spouse sign a loan agreement back to your business. That loan agreement could be a demand note that pays 5% a year, which is the minimum the IRS requires. And let's say, I'm making it up, you pay them back all of it plus interest when they're 21. If you put it back into your business, let's say conservatively, and I know you do a lot more than this, let's say your business grows 10% a year. If they're 6, let's say, I think the number in my book is 7, at 21, that's $400,000 you're going to pay them at 21. You've made $800,000, and all of it is, except for the interest, and then the money your business made on the money, tax-free. How can you stay poor? How can you not get wealthy paying your kids? Now, the caveat is they have to have a real business. You have to prove, that 3-year-old, what did they do for your business? And by the way, a lot of people are like, I'll have them sweep the floors and pay them hourly. Look, at $15,750, you're going to run into labor laws. Kids can't work that much to make that kind of money. But it doesn't have to be hourly. Rihanna, I think the figure is she made $800 million by the time she was 18, or $80 million by the time she was 18. You think she worked hourly? She provided value. And if you're hiring your kids and you give them specific tasks, what are we doing? Responsibility, agreement, commercial responsibility. And then, so we had a client, they had a bunch of kids. A lot of our clients have a bunch of kids. I don't know what that's about. And they had a 3-year-old, and I'm like, well, we can't really use her. I'm like, well, you could if there was a legitimate business function. And they're like, well, what can she do? He was a general contractor. I'm like, just set up a YouTube channel and go before and after. Here's what it was before dad got it. And here's what it before. And at the beginning of the video, have their cute little blonde kid go, I love my daddy. And then cut to the AB. They have millions of followers. That kid had value. No IRS agent's going to go, well, they really didn't do it. Where do you think our marketing is coming from now? This kid's face and the other kids or whatever. So as a parent, and by the way, the rules are they have to be 17 or younger. They have to live with you 6 months of the year. You have to pay for their stuff. So you're paying for them. They can be 22 or younger, but they have to be a full-time student. And from 18 to 22, you do have to pay FICA. But it's still state and federal tax-free. To answer your question more directly, what are we teaching our kids? We need to reprogram anything they're getting in school around saving, around paying off your house, around borrowing money. I'm generally against Dave Ramsey, but if you're stuck and you're like in a loop where you can't pay your bills, Dave Ramsey's that's great, but it's not good for building business because every rich person borrowed money to make business. That's what banks are for, to fund business. And like I said, if you have a problem, business bankruptcy. It's not great, but it's there. And in an LLC, it protects your personal assets. So we train our kids in fiduciary responsibility. You said you do X by X. And if you don't, then there's consequences, financial consequences. You don't get paid or you don't get the value you wanted. And then understanding that saving money is a mistake. You're giving control to the banks. Instead, invest your money. And even small investments compounded over time create massive returns. And pay, instead of saying, oh, I want to buy that ATV. Sure. $10,000, let's say it's a side-by-side, it's $10,000. I'm making it up. $10,000. Great. Dad, I want that. Okay. Can you buy it for me on a loan? I could. And then you pay me back. Again, fiduciary responsibility. I got a better idea though. Why don't you come to work for me here, have my LLC pay you, and then from your investment, you pay it, you buy it. And then we put it in the LLC or we do whatever because, kids can't actually own anything. But you create financial responsibility that, hey, if you invest the money and the proceeds of it can pay for that side-by-side or for that computer or the whatever it is, then great. So if you can train your kids to invest money and then buy what they want from investments, that's the key function of getting wealthy because the taxation on it's less and you're training a situation where kids understand that I make money by investment, not by trading my time. And by the way, time, it's the only non-renewable resource on the planet. We say, oh, I'm spending my time with you. That's not by chance. I only have so much. And we don't know how much it is. I'm a little older than you, but for all we know, I'll have more than you later. We don't know. We just don't know. And every time we spend our time to earn money, what we're really doing is living the American dream for our bosses, because they're getting the value, because they're not spending their time for money. They're spending their knowledge, their investment for money, which is way cheaper. Cheaper, I'm using this word because your time is invaluable. And to take our kids away from get a job, go work, that's what you got to do to make money, it's a huge mistake.
Mark, thank you so much for spending so much time with me today.
Of course.
I really appreciate everything that you do, and you have literally changed my mindset around money, around business, and around the things that I need to do to build on. Because, I came to this country and I came here to make money. I'm not here to be poor or just have a job. And I definitely appreciate everything that you're doing. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll say one more thing. In the conversation of immigrants, which is a hot topic, right? It's been hot for years. No one really talks about the immigrants that come and thrive. The immigrants who are like, capitalism? That sounds great. Even immigrants that come and work at a job and go, I just want to pay for my family and have them come over. This is great. And you're that success. And I just want your listeners to hear that not only you're established and successful filmmaker and you've been making film all over the country, but what you and your brother and your family have done is the epitome of what America is all about. We are a nation of immigrants. And not all immigrants have done what you've done. And I salute you for being the poster child of what immigrants and America is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. I also have to thank all the people throughout our journey that have been there, that have given me opportunities, like the university that I went to, all of the friends, all of the people, and all of the people that I have met through my time here. Even though we have all the issues with immigration, I think Americans, they're the most giving people in the world. And I'm really sick and tired of anyone that is bad-mouthing the country, saying bad things about the U.S., because even with all the issues and all the problems that we have, it's still the greatest country ever, and we still have to build that up. We can't keep saying, oh, this country is just terrible, everything has gone to shit. That's not going to get us anywhere. I live every day grateful that I get to be here and that we get to make something better for everyone, for our kids, and for people to enjoy. So I'm definitely grateful and always proud that I get to live in America and just live the dream.
People don't understand what communism, even socialism is, because we've lived here. And we had a marketing person who who lives in Australia, and we talked about all our tax things, and he's working with us, and he goes, let me just show you guys what are my taxes. And he makes about $185,000 a year, 47% tax. And he's like, right, I can't do a C-Corp or an LLC or anything like this. This is what I got to pay. And they bill me. People don't realize in America, you don't get a bill. You don't get an invoice at the end of the year from the IRS saying you owe this. When they say this is a voluntary tax system, it doesn't mean you volunteer to not pay tax. You still have to pay, but you choose. How awesome. You can't get me more free than that. Obviously, the IRS can audit you, but you're the one that gets to say. So why not organize yourself? Take full advantage of what's available, not just to us on the little peon levels, but at the highest level, because that's also available to you. And it's not available anywhere else on the planet. I promise you, you're not going to find the tax benefits that Americans have anywhere else.
Well, guys, thank you so much for checking in with us today. We really appreciate your time, and we hope this episode was helpful. Please send it to a friend, and we'll see you on the next one.